Welcome, friend. I'm Dr. Graham Wiedenfeld, and I'm in the weeds trying to understand Solanas and Getino's Hacia, tercer, cine. I'm going to give some background on the authors, their ideology, and then go through some excerpts. So, Fernando Solanas and Octavio Getino, or just Getino, uh, were two leftists in Argentina, although I believe Solanas was born in Spain. Um, and they supported key politician in mid-century, Juan Perón. His first wife was Evita, a movie with Madonna you may have heard of. He was president first in 1946 to 1955, and then there was a series of there was a military junta that set up kind of army dictators from 66 to 73, and then Juan Perón was voted in again, which of course the left was very happy about. And you see, it was the lead up to this when their article came out in 1966, 69. Juan Perón dies at 73. Isabel Perón, his wife, had been vice president. His second wife had been vice president, takes over. But there's another military junta in 76 through 83. And so, these authors are actually, they go into exile. They have to leave the country until 83. So we'll see why their politics are so on the left that they have to get out of the country. But just a little background to think about the intense political division in Argentina at this time, like borderline civil war, all kinds of atrocities going on. And meanwhile, Isabel Perón became one of the first women heads of state in the world, really prominent figure, groundbreaking for the time. So Solanas and Getino are filmmakers first, and their film La Hora de los Hornos, The Hour of the Furnaces. They're the leaders in a group. They're connected to labor movement, CGT, who gets covered in the film, which is a kind of documentary, an activist documentary. And you should definitely check out the film and see where they're coming from and how that fits in with the text. So this term third cinema comes from third world. And third world is a term that is a good thing for them at this time, and was in the context of the Cold War, meant non-aligned countries that were neither part of the first world of the U.S. and its allies, the NATO countries, nor the Soviet communist world of Moscow. They were countries that didn't want to pick sides. It was, so you see the movement for peace in their symbol on the top right. After the Korean War, there were leaders in especially Yugoslavia, Egypt, Ghana, and Indonesia that in the 60s and then in the 70s led these countries to say, hey, we don't want another proxy war between capitalists and communists playing out in our country. So they formed this movement to kind of band together all as a group to resist that as much as they could. So third world today in the U.S. has a negative connotation of poor countries, as if first world was richer, but that's not what the original sense was. Third world was a good thing, and you can see how it's geographically the global South. So there is there is a colonial component that I'll get to later. Um, okay, Solanas and Getino, committed leftists, and to give you a quick overview of Marx, uh, Marx and Engels in the Communist Manifesto, they look at history in big eras and see what is the factor that's causing historical change, and they see class struggle, um, as well as new technology that are driving these. And so, after kind of a prehistorical state in villages and whatnot, there's a feudalist era, which is defined by social rank, nobility, guilds, artisans, all the way down to peasants, servants, and enslaved people in some places. So well, in a lot of places. Um, and this epoch is going to transition into capitalism, where the ranks are going to change into two classes, an upper class and a lower class, owners and workers. um, and rather than the stable economy of this rural, mostly rural, agricultural, feudal society, there's going to be all of a sudden new markets with new transportation and communication technologies. The markets are growing ever bigger. Each business is also trying to expand into the global market, and so there's all this instability. It's a state defined by crisis, and so that's the historical side, which is very much kind of a fact, an accepted approach in sociology. You can't be a sociologist and not think about that. The more kind of political idealist side is where are things going, and so communism for them is an ideal built around community, the commune, where there's common property, there are no class differences. Now, how the Bolsheviks and Lenin take this to a party and kind of authoritarian thing, that's one version of Marxism and communism. That's not every version, and not the version of Solanas and Getino. In some ways, their focus is more on grassroots, on the kind of guerrilla movement. So, in capitalism, where I'm at right now, the conflict between the owners and the workers, to understand how this works, they have this theory of surplus value, which is going to show up in the text, and that's the idea that how does the owner class support itself if it isn't working? Well, they have to squeeze money from the workers. They make money without working. If you're an investor, you just sit home and collect money without doing work. You buy low, you sell high, the prices ever increase, and so you're always making money. And the person who's actually making the money, creating that value, is the people creating that value are the workers. But the workers are not getting full value for what they create. If something is selling for $100 and there's 10 workers, the workers are not getting $10 each. The workers might be getting $9, $8, $2 each, and there's that. And I'm oversimplifying this, but the surplus value would be what the owners are skimming off the top and taking away from the workers. And because they always want to be taking away and squeezing more and more, you're going to have increasing inequality, and this is why increasing crises, why capitalism is never stable, but is continual crisis. And the Marxist interpretation is it's moving towards a tipping point where the workers are not going to take it anymore, and this is when a revolution happens. Okay, picture of the Communist Manifesto cover there. Um, how this fits with colonialism. So remember the upper class, the lower class. Geographically, there's the colonies, which were mainly European countries, and then the colonized, which were mainly in the global South. So um, in in the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th century, uh, the form mercantilism was one form of it, where the raw resources are taken out from the colonized countries. That's the red in the little map here. Those resources are sent back to the mother country, who where the manufactured goods are produced, and then those goods are sold to the colonized. And the colonies can't they don't trade with each other, so you don't have the benefit of a free market here. It really gives a huge advantage to the mother country, and depicted by this cartoon right below me here, that each colony is serving up these raw resources, which they are taking the surplus value from, and is making them wealthy. So again, the global South, the global North being, tending to be the colonizer countries, and the global South, the colonized. Leftists are also, into decolonization and trying to lift up the global South, so to reverse that inequality. That's some background on general political philosophy and ideology that's going to guide Solanas and Getino. And this is very much a political text. It's about how movies can be politically active. Their film was an activist film, The Hour of the Furnaces, and this text was it came out of the film, or it was developed at the same time of it. These kind of general principles of being political cinema, being an activist cinema. And so I'm going to let me give you a quick overview uh, of those ideas, and then look at some excerpts under two different themes. First, kind of the socioeconomic systems and how cinema fits into that, or media, and then thinking about the specific forms of film and video, and what it might look like to be an activist cinema. So, third cinema does not align with the geography. It's different, but it's similar in that third is good. So the first cinema is the mainstream, the Hollywood, the culture industry, right? The second cinema are art films that are trying to be kind of outside the system and go against it, but they really can't. They're still caught up in it, even though they're trying to do something different. And guerrillas are, the outsiders that are the revolutionary filmmakers. So, in terms of politics, the culture industry is about the status quo, representing the interests of the establishment, the owners, those investors who are investing in the films, and making sure that things don't change, or that the politics don't change in a way that's not to their advantage. The second cinema is more identified with kind of reform, like progressive change. We don't want to shake it up too much in a revolution. We just want to make, some reasonable changes. And Solanas and Getino are very skeptical of that these changes really amount to nothing, no change at all. What you really need for change is revolution, and that's where they come in. So this article was Hacia, tercer, cine, published in 1968, translated as Towards a Third Cinema in Cinéaste, an American film journal magazine in 71. So first, there's this theme of system and counter system, and especially, there's the culture industry system, and then the guerrilla is the counter system outside it, and how you fight that culture industry. So on page 1, you'll see them have the goal here, attempt to create films of decolonization that oppose the system. That seemed like it was impossible because everybody thought of film as a consumer good. Without saying it, the culture industry is one simple way from Horkheimer and Adorno, is to understand these themes. Down at the bottom of that paragraph, films, the most valuable tool of communication of our times, were destined to satisfy only the ideological and economic systems of the owners of the film industry, the lords of the world film market, the great majority of whom were from the United States. Okay, so it's not the content of the film itself that's as important as the economic system. Who's in control of the decisions at the end of the day are these investors, the big money people, and so it's their interest, the interest of the investor, owner, colonizer class, that is going to shape everything subtly. This is the idea. So first cinema is the system. The second cinema he starts to describe here at the bottom. So first, one way to understand this system is that the industry has production, the studios, distribution, which are the studios today. They're the buyers and sellers of films to all of the theaters, and exhibition being the theaters in that day. And exhibition these get kind of blurred in the streaming era where somebody like Netflix is both doing production, distribution, and exhibition all at the same time. But the idea is that these big film companies are monopolizing all three of those at the same time. Okay, the second cinema here is the reformist policy. Is unable to produce anything but a cinema within the system itself. At best, it can be the progressive wing of establishment cinema. But it's trying to be progressive. But you can see in the logic of the owner versus the worker class, it's the upper class always has the upper hand in the whole situation, unless it arises, comes to conflict. So it's kind of interesting here on the second column how they answer why are we writing this now? Where is this idea coming from? Are we just some sort of geniuses? No, not at all. They say we're inspired by the revolutionary movements that are happening in third world countries. He cites the Cuban Revolution, Vietnamese. So it's this historical situation here again, Marx's sense that it's history and these conflicts in history that are driving everything, that is driving them to be, this concept of a new man, but new person would be a little more gender neutral today, is kind of what they feel like is driving them. Okay. Another issue they talk about here is the separation of politics and art. They find that separation to be an illusion because everything for them is defined by this historical context of class struggle. And to forget that context is precisely what the upper owner class would want you to do. Oh, don't worry about the political implications of things. Just escape and enjoy these free artistic things without thinking about politics. Well, that's exactly the establishment attitude. You know, we don't need to get into politics and changing things. Just kind of enjoy this moment and these sounds and images, and just enjoy yourself. Be happy. Okay, this is opiate of the masses that activists want to push against. So it's pushing against the system with the counter system, both this social system, this economic system, and even on the psychological level. So they describe. I love some of these lines here. There's our culture and their culture. That until we get to this kind of ideal classless state, this liberation, it's us versus them, it's upper class versus lower class. Till emancipation is reality, a culture of subversion is what the left is, and a cinema of subversion is what third cinema is. That means, jumping down to the next paragraph, different forms of expression. They're very modernist here. Make it new. We're going to break with the past. New ways, methods of even making movies. Very much DIY, do it yourself. How can we do it that's not a big studio production that requires a big investment, because that would kind of corrupt the filmmaking and the filmmakers' their autonomy and what they want to make. So there's a definition here on page 2, column 2. Third cinema is the cinema that recognizes in that struggle the most gigantic cultural, scientific, and artistic manifestation of our time, the great possibility of constructing a liberated personality with each people as the starting point. In a word, the decolonization of culture. This is a manifesto. It's very powerful. It's also very much ideology, and as you read through it, it's an education in the ideology that's motivating them, and kind of understanding their political view of the world. Because for them, cinema is all about politics, and it's interesting when they talk about thinking about us being. You may be a film student in the university here. Down on the bottom, he says, the colonization of taste and consciousness to the process of neocolonial education, which begins in the university. Mass communications are more effective for neocolonialism than napalm. So, what is holding the power of the owner class? Well, it's the education that people get in the university. That education itself is part of the system that tied into the middle classes, which you see at the top here. This middle class is educated and brought up in kind of the younger brother of the owners, investors, who tell them, oh, here's how you should do things so you can be upper class. And of course, that dream is always only realized for a few. But the middle classes then, are going to, help the owners rule over the masses, and everyone. Then, in fact, it's there. People aren't conscious of the class difference and the class struggle and the inequality that's happening, necessarily. That's why he talks about colonization of taste. It's as if they're, for them, they would say that the kinds of the movies that you like to see Hollywood movies, because uh, you've been told that that's what you want to see, which is a theme that also comes up in Adorno, that the culture industry tells you what you want. Um, the problem with the second cinema here, the new waves, author cinema, focused on the individual artist, is that they can't escape the system. To make the kinds of films that they make still is requiring a big amount of money, and so they're inevitably tied back into the economics, and can't be revolutionary for that reason. And you get down to the second paragraph here. Want to set out to fight the system. What are these real alternatives that can actually step outside movies? The distribution networks. Today it would be not being on Netflix and Amazon, not worrying about the credentials of showing your film, but really just connecting with people as part of the political struggle. So on page 5 here, they say it's not enough to just watch the movies and get them out there. YouTube is not enough, even if it's uncensored and you can get your message out there. What really matters is the gathering of people in the audience. It's the political movement, the political meeting that's happening. Maybe this could happen on a format like Twitch, but it's not just about delivering that content. Films offer an effective pretext for gathering an audience in addition to the ideological message they contain. So films are great as an event for holding meetings, and people who might not want to go to a political meeting, they're nevertheless more likely to go and see a film. So this is part of the use for it, and getting people involved in politics. And great examples here that they give at the bottom of the page. The students who raised barricades in Montevideo, Uruguay, after they saw this film, Me Gustan los Estudiantes. After showing The Hour of the Furnaces in Merida and Caracas, there are people, some of the audiences went out and demonstrated and sang the Internacional, the kind of communist anthem. So that's really the end goal, is not just to convey information, but to gather people in meetings and to take action, and the films being the occasion for that. So as far as the filmmaking, it's also going to be about gathering people together, very collaborative. It's against this, an artist taking credit for it and, being a genius and getting awards. We don't care about that at all. It's all about the movement. It's all about these higher goals of equality and making life better for the people out there. So talks about the film guerrilla group. They were in the Grupo Liberación Cine, Grupo Cine Liberación, and it's group is also important for security, because you have to be a bit clandestine when you're making radical things that are pushing revolution against the establishment. And he talks about the anticipating the struggle of holding together as a group. Not easy to maintain the cohesion of a group when it is bombarded by the system and its chain of accomplices. So you can think of negative, somebody trying to censor or take down a guerrilla filmmaking group, but it's also the danger of success, being really successful, and that's a way for the system to bombard it and uh, lure people away from those political principles toward their own self-interest of becoming, getting social capital, becoming famous, and so on. Um, okay, so this is in a sense just I'm just looking just to recap that section, uh, thinking about cinema as a socioeconomic system, as part of a socioeconomic system, and with the culture industry being the dominant one of the establishment, and what third cinema is a guerrilla cinema that is fighting that system. It has to be outside it, and it's it has to be political. So it's really about political meanings, um, and politically active cinema that it's outside the whole circuit. You might not even be showing movies in mainstream commercial theaters. You're showing them in halls, where people meet, and like in churches. People meet in churches. People meet in pubs, in community centers. All of these kinds of venues are the sorts of alternatives that you might imagine, where political meetings can happen. Um, and especially because people are not supposed to walk out at the end of the movie and say, "Oh, that was good or bad." No, seeing the movie is supposed to lead to talking about it. You're going to have speeches afterward. You might have discussion, uh, uh, planning actions. You're going to be there in this, there together. It's about the political meeting. Now, what are the films going to look like? Um, this is a question that comes up. So, what do films look like in the first cinema? Is um, a distortion, fantasy here. So they say that imperialism and capitalism, whether in the consumer society or neo-colonized society, everything they veil. They put a veil over everything. They veil everything behind a screen of images and appearances. The image of reality is more important than reality itself. It is a world peopled with fantasies and phantoms, in which what is hideous is clothed in beauty, while beauty is disguised as the hideous. Um, I love this. Okay, on the one hand, fantasy, the imaginary bourgeois universe, replete with comfort, equilibrium, sweet reason, order, efficiency, and the possibility to be someone. Big criticism here of bourgeois middle class ideology of having a standing, having a social status, being somebody, being recognized, respected. Um, I don't think this is the sense of "be someone," which is kind of a famous graffiti in Houston, but um, but it might be, because it's not about being an individual who gets recognized for being great. It's about doing something for the community overall, to make it better, and so that's why they're being critical here. Um, so how do you break this veil of reality, this false reality, this illusion? Uh, is by showing truth, and so documentary is key for them. They talk about, okay, the second paragraph here in this column is testimony, um, uh, giving a documentary or documenting how life really is, not the kind of fantasy or escape from it. Um, and if you see the first cinema, the culture industry, as kind of formulas that colonize taste and tell you what to like, there's a describes it as like a whole language. And so what third cinema is about is, can we come up with a different language, and almost kind of reconfigure the values um, that matter when you watch a movie, what you like, what you dislike. How can we make ourselves into better people uh, with new kinds of movies. That if we're going to be better people, we need to have a better language of filmmaking. Nonetheless, they're not going to just spell out what that is and you know, in a Leninist way, um, tell you how to make movies. No, in fact, so they say here, it would be absurd to lay down a set of aesthetic norms. Uh, they want to just be open to new forms, very modernist here. Be receptive to all that the people have to offer and offer them the best. So if you're making movies for people, uh, assume assume that you know, respect the audience, respect their intelligence, respect their taste. Um, you know, as che Guevara put it, respect the people by giving them quality. So he doesn't want to, you know, to dumb down content and not make artistic films, but quite the opposite. That these, you know, new forms of cinema that they're making, um, the uh, you know, they really believe in the people, the popular classes, their ability um, to adapt into you know, this kind of new man, this better people who are going to appreciate a different kind of cinema. Okay, the film act means an open-ended film. Of course, it's open-ended because it's part of the larger um, political meaning. It is essentially a way of learning. So the discussion and actions are going to follow it. It's not enough to just watch the movie. It's really learning and participating in the political life. That is what third cinema is all about. Okay, so you know, before he said he's not going to lay down a set of rules, but nevertheless, he's going to say, okay, you know, let's just get a little contrast in what first cinema, what Hollywood does. Uh, well, Hollywood movies is cinema of characters, with one of the themes that of individuals, with that of masses. So instead of, if Hollywood has characters, um, the third cinema is going to have themes. We're going to counter the cinema of characters with one of themes. We're going to counter movies about individuals in their kind of self-interested lives with movies about the masses, the big communities. We're going to counter movies who are focused all on the artist, the filmmaker, author, with movies made by groups. We're going to counter, you know, the neo-colonial misinformation with one of information, illusion versus truth, escape versus you know, revealing the truth, passivity, aggression, and so forth. So the institution and the guerrilla cinema outside it. It's a powerful set of oppositions here. A new kind of human being for what each of us has the possibility of becoming. A lot of these themes come out of Dziga Vertov's uh, uh, vision of, you know, Kino I and the new man that in the uh, you know, Soviet Union and Ukraine in the 1920s. Um, these are informing third cinema here too. Okay, so decolonization of the filmmaker and the film, simultaneous uh, with the, you know, collective struggle. The battle begins without against the enemy who attacks us, but also within against the ideas and models of the enemy to be found inside each one of us. So the real work, or the deep work going on here, is not just about getting in the streets with the barricades. It's, you know, changing the ideas and models and thinking that there's the thinking that our thinking patterns have been colonized, and this is, you know, raising new consciousness and questions. And so this is, you know, the learning and intelligence is what's so important. Despite their criticizing the university before, these men are certainly intellectuals, and believe in, you know, believe in the intellectual capacity of cinema to make social change. So what are these themes that the guerrilla cinema is going to have as opposed to, the individual characters? Here's some great themes: the history of the country, love and unlove between combatants, the efforts of a people that awakens. All this is reborn before the lens of decolonized camera. So it's, in effect, stories that are about the political movement itself, and uh, the history of the country and how the political movement is going to fit into that. So to wrap up, third cinema, tercer cine, is based on the idea that the economic system shapes film language. And by film language, I mean, uh, the all of the uh, principles of storytelling. Pleasing fantasies shape the human being in a bad way. This is the culture industry idea, dumbing people down to the level of 11-year-olds. And so a new system has to be created, kind of DIY, and this is also creating a new kind of person who is going to not be so caught up in their individual life and their, their own social status and self-interest, but is going to care about the collective good, and is going to, devote ththemselves to that social change. A couple of pieces of criticism are at the end here. I talk about this in my book somewhat, is that this view of the whole cinema system is, economics is first. Like, all of the content is determined by the economical system and the class conflict behind it. Everything is an illusion. Not, it isn't about a specific argument of how this, some representation is wrong. It's just based on this general argument that because the owner class has the power in this system, whatever it produces is always going to be in the interest of the owner class. Well, another way to look at films is to say that maybe economics doesn't have to be primary. If and this is in fact important for development of civic life, is to create institutions that value things other than economics. Now, Solanas and Getino would say, "Oh, Wiedenfeld, you have this illusion of separating art and politics," and I would say, well, this what I'm trying to do would be to, in fact, separate civic life from economics, and that's an important step to establishing democratic republican institutions and carving out some freedom for people and for artists. They would say that, well, that's precisely the illusion of progressivism. But it's great to have that perspective and to see to see things in this. It's just so clear how and schematic their thought is. It's very powerful.